Do you really want to find out how much a monthly payment costs on a Lamborghini? Let's talk about it now. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Mark with exoticcarplayplace. So before we get into specific examples of some cars and how much they're going to cost per month, which will give you some examples, you have to understand there's three major factors. Number one is the principal cost of the car. The cost can be anywhere from $100,000, like this early Gallardo, up to $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, depending on the type of Lamborghini you're buying. Now there's another factor, and that is the sales tax. And depending on where you live, some sales taxes are higher, some are lower. For example, if you live in Las Vegas, Nevada, you know the state tax there might be less than it might be in, say, California. Or if you live up in Canada, taxes can be higher. But a good round number is 5% tax. We can use principal number of the investment of the car, the investment price of the car, compare that to the 5% sales tax as an example, and then you have to incorporate the interest charges. What is an average interest rate? The interest rate is going to be quite variable depending on where you live. You're going to have to research that with your banks, and it's going to be all over the map. Some of it depends on the economy. Largely, it's going to depend on the lending period as well as the type of credit score you may have. There's a lot of factors that'll go into what you're going to be paying for interest rates, but consider 10% is a good loose number. I think generally most people can do better than that. So let's break this down to the principal cost of the car versus the tax that's applied to it and the interest rate. Now understand this, if we're talking about a 10% interest rate, it's not 10% core off of the principal value of the car. So interest charges don't get applied consistently as you would expect. For example, we've got a $100,000 Lamborghini right here, early 2005 Gallardo. You add 5% sales tax, that takes you to $105,000. And then on top of that, you're going to apply the interest rate. Well, everybody knows the banks are here to make money. The way they apply their interest rates go into a formula. It's not just a standard 10% on the top of your price. It's not 10% of that 100 grand and all of a sudden you're paying $110,000 for this car. That is not the case. As a matter of fact, when you work out the formulation, they want the front end of the lending term to be much heavier on the lending rate. So it averages out the way that you'd expect it to. But essentially, this will ultimately add up to about a $28,000 lending amount. So this car won't cost you $100,000. This car will cost you $100,000 plus about $5,000 because of the tax, if we're going to assume 5% tax, purchase tax on this. And then a 10% lending rate is not going to land you into a $110,000 price tag for this. At the end of a 5-year term, 60 months, which is 5 years, this car will cost you an additional $28,800 in lending dollars. So in other words, this $100,000 car after 5 years at 10% lending rate will ultimately end up costing you close to $130,000. That's a third more than the car was worth initially. So what's the best way to go? Do you buy this car outright cash so you avoid all of the interest charges altogether? Or do you take this thing on a 60-month term and go for the full lending rate and then suck it up, essentially? Well, there's a few ways to consider this. If it's an older used car, or if you're strapped for cash and you don't have a lot of monopoly money laying around, so to speak, emergency funds are always nice to have. What if you have a major breakdown? What if there's an issue with your house? What if you need some major issue, say some serious dental work? Or what if you need to spend 10 grand, 20 grand right now? It's good to have money in the bank. So depending on what your personal financial situation is, you may or may not decide to either borrow the money or pay for it outright. Even if you have $100,000 cash, you may choose not to spend the entire 100 grand on the car up front. You may decide to only put maybe half of it down. Maybe you want to put 50 grand and only borrow on the remaining 50. Because then that 50 grand either you can use as contingency money or those safe day monies that you might need, what we just described, or you might put it into another investment that might yield a higher value than the rate that you're spending on your lending rate. So you could, if you were, say, for example, investing in real estate or potential business opportunities or some other project that could yield a higher return, you might just do that. You might put all your money towards your investment and make your monthly payments here. As a matter of fact, a car like this, because it's an exotic car, it typically doesn't depreciate, especially if it's used, like a lot of generic vehicles on the road today. And if it's a used supercar and you know that you're not going to suffer serious depreciation, then you can really get into the car, drive it for 3 years, sell it, and all you've done is paid the interest. As a matter of fact, if your project money and you've got that extra cash sitting on the side or in the bank, you are able to put that towards an investment that makes you some significant money. Well, obviously now that's the basic economics. So you have to balance where that money is going. If all you're doing is putting it into a basic savings account that's paying you 0.5% over 5 years, well, that's not saving you money and that's not well-earned cash. In which case, you might as well pay the car off completely, be done with it, save yourself the interest charges. But again, as I say for example, you're investing in a great business opportunity that can yield you a 30% profit in the next, say, 2 years and return over each year upon year. You may look at that investment and make the monthly payments and know that when you do sell the car 3 years down the road, that you'll get your money back and you'll be dollars in the bank ahead. So we could talk about another quick example. How about a brand new Lamborghini Huracan? You know, the fancy car that the boys at Daily Driven Exotics drive? Everybody knows that channel. They drive a Huracan. Or how about Parker Nierenstein from Vehicle Virgins? He also drives a bright green Kermit the Frog Lamborghini Huracan. Those are examples of the late model V10 Lamborghini that a lot of people are buying these days. They're very popular, they're very advanced, and they're a lot of fun. But you want to buy one of those, and a lot of them might start costing about the $250,000 range. We're talking Canadian funds, of course. In the US, things are a little cheaper. Canadian dollars at $250,000 Lamborghini Huracan. Consider these calculations. So again, at 5% sales tax and 10% lending rate, that could add up to a $5,577 per month payment for a brand new Lamborghini Huracan if you're not putting any money down. If you're paying for the full amount, you're borrowing the entire amount of $250,000 at a 10% lending rate, you will be paying over $5,500 per month for that car. Now consider this other little tidbit. So not only are you paying your tax, which you really can't get away from taxes, it's a pretty difficult thing to avoid. And as a matter of fact, those that get too creative trying to avoid taxes usually wind up going to the Huskow. So be careful with that. But more importantly, what else you can experience is not 10% of the $25,000. As I explained before, it's not a direct add-on. It's not 10% of your principal price that goes to that car. So in other words, 250 grand, your lending rate 10% isn't another $25,000. No, it's $72,000. When inserted into the formula so the bank comes out ahead, your total lending amount at the end of a 5-year term or 60 months is about $72,000 on a $250,000 car. How's that for a significant lending rate? So 330 grand is your end purchase price for a $250,000 car. So you have to really consider, is that money going to be used elsewhere? If it is, and it's going into an investment that's going to earn me more money than that I might get from the amount gained from saving off the percentage, again, you got to look at that. Your interest rate payout versus your investment capital earned will offset one way or the other. And that will be how you're going to calculate what your best sweet spot is. Again, you may only put half of the value down. If you have, say, $125,000, you may put half of that down. Oh, and I know I didn't give you the actual total. So you want to buy a car like this, an early Lamborghini Gallardo, a 10% lending rate for a 5-year term. This car here will cost you about $2,231 on a 5-year term. So I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure you hit that subscribe button down there. And I really hope to see you guys on the next video. Catch you then. See ya. Bye-bye.